What's up, fellow music nerds? Matrix here, and you are locked into the Matrix Music Review Podcast, the only place to get your fix for country and alternative music. And we are back with an alternative episode. Really excited to talk about a bunch of the new albums that have come out recently, including two of my most anticipated albums of the year so far. Get into a bunch of the new singles that have come out, as well as some news and tour announcements at the end, so stick with us for that. As always, if you like what I'm doing here over at Matrix Music Review, head on over to Twitter and Instagram and follow me at Matrix Music Review. Head over to Spotify and like our playlist where you can hear all the songs in this episode plus some other ones that were not in the episode. And head on over to whatever platform you're listening on and give us a 5-star review, leave us a comment, and let us know what else we should be listening to, okay? So with that, we're going to jump right into our album reviews, and the first album that we have is Fall Out Boy's So Much for Stardust. Fall Out Boy returns with So Much for Stardust, and it's really a return to form for them, in my opinion. You know, I love how we get this opening piano classical swell on Love from the Other Side, where, you know, I heard the beginning of this when it was released as a single, and I was kind of unsure as to where they were going with it, and then as soon as that classical piano sound broke, you got that hard-hitting Fall Out Boy instrumental that we've all come to know and love. So I was super excited to hear that as the opener, and then the first 3 tracks as well are just classic Fall Out Boy songs, whether that's instrumentally, lyrically, all of it. You know, those are all 3 classic Fall Out Boy songs with Love from the Other Side, Hold Me Like a Grudge, and I can't remember what the last one was, but the first 3 were perfect examples of classic Fall Out Boy. And then you get into some of their experimentation on this album, and the first song that I saw some experimentation on was Fake Out, and it was kind of refreshing because it's not something that we're used to hearing from them, but it is still something that works, you know. And I love the line in there that says, "We started as shiny dimes and then got flipped too many times." And I think that's something that we can all relate to for sure, because we've all kind of started out as these bright, shiny, you know, bright-faced people, and then throughout the years and throughout all of our, you know, issues that we go through, you know, we got flipped one too many times and the shine starts to wear off, right? So I love that line from Fall Out Boy here, but this song really is a perfect example of experimentation that works. You know, I talked about the experimentation in different albums and whether it works or not, and I think it works here for Fall Out Boy because what they do so well is that they don't lose sight of their roots, and that's really what it boils down to in terms of artists succeeding or failing in terms of their experimentation, especially ones that have been around so long. You know, we got Paramore earlier in the year where they experimented a little bit more on the less heavy side in terms of the production, but they still kept their angst in the lyrics and it worked. And now we have Fall Out Boy that does the exact same thing where, you know, we still get those lyrical hits and it might be a little bit different production-wise than what we're used to, but it still works. So I love that Fall Out Boy was able to experiment there, and it really worked and it really connected with me, at least on that particular level. The next track, Heaven, Iowa, is one that, you know, I normally wouldn't talk about this track because I really don't have much to say about it. But I couldn't get past this track because it sounded so much like background hold music, the instrumental at least. And I don't know why I could not get past the fact that it sounded like that classic background, you're on hold with accompany music, that I just couldn't get past it. So Heaven, Iowa was a weird one. Let me know if you guys think the same thing about the hold music in the background, but Heaven, Iowa was definitely one that unfortunately I could not connect to because I kept hearing that music. So one that I did like was I Am My Own Muse, and it's really a hard-hitting track about how you're trying not to fail in a relationship, or you're trying not to fail the relationship. And so I loved I Am My Own Muse. I loved Kintsugi Kid. That was probably one of my favorites on the album besides some of the singles. And I love that the lyric in that is, I spent so long in a haze that he liked feeling nothing. You know, it was one of those lines where you kind of realize that, maybe you spent your whole life or you spent this period of time in such a haze that it just felt like that was normal. And maybe it's not normal. Maybe you need to get out of that haze and experience things a little bit more. So I love that line in there. It made me think a little bit. And then the last track I want to talk about in this album is What a Time to Be Alive, because I don't know where the hell this song came from Fall Out Boy, because it definitely is not a classic Fall Out Boy sound, but I loved it because there were so many different lines in there that really just, in that sense, were classic Fall Out Boy, but it was just so different for them. We're going to live stream the apocalypse. It says, everything is lit except my serotonin. Everything is lit but my lightning bolt brain. And I love that line. And then you can tell that this was done way back during, COVID times, where we have a line that says, when I said leave me alone, this isn't what I meant. I got the quarantine blues. That is definitely something that I can say I experienced. I think everybody probably experienced the quarantine blues a little bit. But this was such a cool song with all those different little lines and different little nuances that we got, that, it really does make you appreciate Fall Out Boy as artists and as lyricists as well. So, overall, I really didn't say a whole lot about this album. It was such a fun listen. It was, one of my favorite Fall Out Boy albums in a while now. I feel like some of their most recent work I just really didn't connect with, but for some reason, So Much for Stardust was a completely different experience for me. It was a refreshing, re-energized Fall Out Boy that kind of got back to their roots. I mean, I think I remember they said that they went back to Fueled by Ramen for this and worked with a producer that they felt really kind of brought the best out of them. And, I think that's true. I think sometimes you just got to go back to your roots and really do what worked best for you. And even so, Fall Out Boy did experiment on this album, and the experimentation worked for me. So this is another blueprint for some of our elder bands to, you can adapt and evolve and even experiment, but don't lose sight of what your roots are. And that's really my biggest takeaway from this album was Fall Out Boy does not lose sight of what their roots are, and did not lose sight of how they got to be so successful and why their fans are so connected to them. And they gave us an album and So Much for Stardust that I think everybody can relate to, everybody should like. And I don't think there's going to be too much in terms of complaints about it. So Much for Stardust by Fall Out Boy. If you haven't checked it out yet, go give it a listen. It's worth it. Next up is the debut album from Sam Hauge, which is Out of Isolation. Now, Sam is somebody that I talked about on the last alternative podcast with two of his singles, and I loved listening to this album right after that. And what I love most about Sam's album is that they're all solo writes. Sam is the only one writing on this, so you really get a good sense of his style, his sound, and what he wants to say in these songs. And it's seriously impressive to me, the instrumentals behind it as well. You get a lot of nostalgia, you get a lot of energy in all of the instrumentals from Sam on this. So really impressed with this debut album. We look at a song like Never Find Me, and that's really just a great song about how, someone's pushing a little bit too hard in a relationship to try and keep it going. And at some point you just want to leave and not be found and not come back to that situation. But I think my favorite on this album is Let This Go. And it's basically, do we just want to let it go or just keep trying in the relationship? I love that thought from Sam, and he really delivers it with such emotion too that you can kind of feel that he's gone through these situations as well. There is this track on here that I think is classic nostalgic pop punk, and it's called This Will Get Us Nowhere. I think if you guys haven't heard it yet, I'll link it in the podcast playlist, but I think this is one that everybody will listen to and say, wait a minute, I'm back at Warped Tour, I'm back in middle school just jamming out to this track. So I love This Will Get Us Nowhere from Sam on this. And, I love when I can just make a discovery of an artist like Sam, because this is kind of on par with when I released the first episode of this podcast with my discovery of Sleepless. And when you find an artist that has such a good sound and so much talent, and you can see it right away, it really energizes you to keep doing what you're doing. So kudos to Sam for putting out a great debut album. I think it's one that should be getting more attention than it is right now. So Out of Isolation from Sam Hauge, go check it out. Next up, we got Secret Combinations from Bridge the Gap. Now, I don't really have much to say about Bridge the Gap's debut album because I just want everybody to go check this out. It's some of the best skate punk that you will hear, and it's some of the best skate punk out right now. And what I mean by skate punk is this is an album where I felt like I was playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and this was just soundtrack in the background. I loved it. And I connected so much with this album too, because this is the type of music that really made me fall in love with the alternative genre and the pop punk genre as well. Because, growing up playing video games all the time, I played Tony Hawk Pro Skaters, I played Motocross 2000 with, all those different soundtracks, whether it was MXPX or whatever it may be. But those types of games help shape my listening habits in terms of alternative. It's where I fell in love with the genre, like I said. But when you get an album like that in 2023, it's really fun to be able to listen to it and know that this is something fresh and this is something new from a band that's probably going to be around doing this for a while. So really excited to hear more from Bridge the Gap. My favorite track is probably My Creation, but there's a really close second with Whippersnapper, which I love the emotion behind that track. So Secret Combinations from Bridge the Gap, go check it out. Next up is my most anticipated album of 2023 so far, and that is the self-titled debut from Archetypes Collide. Now, Archetypes Collide is a band that I've talked about numerous times here on the podcast, and I've shown a lot of love to, and I'm really excited to check out their debut album. And all I have to say is that this delivered in every way that I could have imagined. I am so happy with how this album came out. I'm so happy with every piece of it, and this is easily my top album of the year so far. So one of the things that I wanted to touch on right away is that this album has a lot of production from Oshi Bishar, who is a member of Beartooth. So if you haven't heard that whole backstory, head over to Fearless Records and check out the story behind Archetypes Collide and getting noticed by Oshi on that, and then him kind of helping them out a little bit and, bringing them into their sound and really helping them capture what they want to say. But this is an album that kind of reminds me of The Death of Peace of Mind from Bad Omens last year. I'm not necessarily talking in terms of sound or lyrics or any of that, but what I mean by this is, around this time last year when Bad Omens released The Death of Peace of Mind, they were still kind of, I wouldn't say unknown, but they were kind of flying under the radar. And when they released that album, it propelled them into what I would consider superstardom. And I have a feeling that this could be the exact same trajectory for Archetypes Collide here. This album has that same feel for me where it's going to explode. It's going to continue to gain momentum. I have a feeling that certain songs are going to get a lot of airplay on Sirius XM Octane, which can really propel people into the next level of stardom. So I'm really excited to see the trajectory of this album. But the album itself, I love that Parasite is the opener. I love that you get that heavy, hard-hitting jolt right away to wake you up and say, all right, Archetypes Collide are here. They're ready to really show you who they are. And one of the things that I was most impressed about throughout this entire album is just Kyle's vocal range. Kyle is one of those vocalists that has such a diverse range that you don't really pick up on until you listen to an album all the way through. You can get that range instantly on a song like Fade Away, where you go from that normal gritty tone that Kyle has, and he hits high notes and he hits all these different notes and he hits some screams in there, and it's just insanity that he can have that vocal range and produce it all the way throughout a 12, 13 track album like he did here. This is an album where it kind of has something for everybody too. And, you have the heavy side if you have a song like Deep End. You have the emotional side, you have the slower side with Paranoid and Paralyzed. But the emotional side is something that I wanted to dive into, and I wanted to talk about What If I Fall. You know, I know that that was a single, but I haven't been able to talk about that on the podcast yet. And What If I Fall is a song that really made me realize how special Archetypes Collide can be, because this track is just basically talking about how everybody has these doubts and they don't want to waste their life and they don't want to let everybody down. And they're so worried about what's going to happen if I fall. What am I going to do if I make a mistake? And it's just it's a track that really makes you sit back and connect. And that's what I loved right away. And I knew that I was going to love this band from that. So really, really happy with What If I Fall. And then the next track that I wanted to talk about was Destiny. You know, Destiny is a track that, again, it displays Kyle's vocal range, but I love the little production at the beginning where you get that bell tolling. And I think that bell tolling is really symbolic of Destiny in general, but this track is basically talking about, is your destiny what you seek? Is it something that you've already kind of accomplished? Is that all your destiny is going to be? And again, I love the lyric in this that says, the satisfaction I seek is always out of reach. And I think that's something, again, that everybody can kind of relate to. Everybody can kind of sympathize with. You know, sometimes we're looking for that satisfaction, but we always feel like we're just missing something. We're just missing it in some way, shape, or form. So I love that from Archetypes Collide there. Separate is another really relatable track where it's hard to separate your friends and your enemies sometimes. And I can get that. You know, sometimes the people that are the closest to you seem like your friends, but maybe they're faking it. Maybe they're just, you know, waiting for your downfall and waiting for you to basically crumble. And I love that they're able to make me relate so significantly on a track like this and just throughout this whole album. So I love the Landon Towers feature. I think that's a really strong track as well. For those of you that are not aware, Landon Tours, not Landon Towers. Landon Tours is he is the vocalist for The Plot and You. So another strong track on this album. And I'm not going to do a track by track on this one because I really just want everybody to go spend some time with this album. I think this is one that everybody's really going to enjoy, and Archetypes Collide's trajectory is just going to continue to rise. I think they are the next big band to explode in terms of I'll call it the hard rock scene, not so much the pop punk scene, but they're the next band that's going to be playing arena shows. They're the next band that's going to be taking newer bands out with them and introducing us to them. You know, they're going to be on tour with Bad Omens. They're going to be on tour with Beartooth. They're going to be on tour with all those bands that we've come to really know and appreciate. And I can't wait to see how high their star rises, because if this self-titled debut is any indication of where they're headed, then we are in for a treat with Archetypes Collide. So self-titled album, Archetypes Collide, go check it out. Y'all are going to love this album. Next album up is Daydreamer from Dead Lakes. So Dead Lakes is a band that just kind of kept popping up with strong tracks, strong singles with Strange Juice, Tongue Planet, all those different tracks that I heard before this album. So I was excited to listen to this album in full, and they have such a unique sound about them. You know, they're pop, they're rock, they're punk, they're a little bit of R&B, they got a little bit of hip hop influence in there. And if you're not familiar with Dead Lakes, I would say if you're a fan of Bring Me the Horizon or even Black Bear, this is a band that you're really going to enjoy. So I went into this album knowing a few of the tracks, but Hold Back, it's a absolute jam of a track. And it's basically talking about how you're tired of holding back and people telling you who you are. You're tired of, you know, basically not being yourself, and it's just time for you to be you. So I love that from Dead Lakes on this album. And one of the interesting things that I noticed is that we had 2 basketball references, which is not something that we hear in this genre really at all. And we had 2 lines where we had Logo Lillard, and we had Fresh Eyes Mellow from '03. So I thought that was just a cool little nuance that I picked up on my second listen through, that there were some NBA references in this. So really, really interesting from Dead Lakes to put in some NBA references. But next track I wanted to talk about with them is Drown It Out. And that's really just about the back and forth after a breakup. And you really hope that other person is fine, but you just know that it's time to leave. You're tired of doing the whole back and forth, friends with benefits, are we still friends, can we be friends thing, and it's just time to leave and let it go and drown out that person's voice. So overall, this is a really strong album. Again, I don't have much to say because there were so many singles, and I think I talked about a couple of the singles in the past on the podcast. So Daydreamer from Dead Lakes, go check it out. The last two albums that I'm just going to mention are ones that I didn't spend a whole lot of time with just because I didn't get a chance to, but I do think everybody should go check it out, and that's the new one from the Bouncing Souls as well as Nothing Nowhere. And I did want to talk about Nothing Nowhere just for a second because this was such an interesting album instrumentally the first time that I listened to it, and I loved the two features on there. The first one with Static Dress, Fortune Teller. I love that track. And then I also love the Will Ramos feature, Tragedy. And every time I hear Will come on a track, I am just blown away by how unreal he is vocally and how unreal he is talent-wise. Will is just one of those people that is going to continue to show up on features because of how talented he is with his craft. So Void Eternal from Nothing Nowhere and the new one from Bouncing Souls, go give them a listen. If you guys want a little bit more of an in-depth review on them, just leave me a comment and I'll try to include them in a future podcast episode. That wraps it up for our albums this week, but we still got a bunch of singles to talk about, and the first one that I want to talk about is No Sleep from Boy Destroy. I love this track from Boy Destroy. It's basically talking about how your mind won't let you sleep, and I love the instrumental behind it. It's really a nostalgic pop punk sound. I love that, it kind of touches on some of those different themes that we've kind of known to be central to this genre as well. So No Sleep from Boy Destroy, go give it a listen. Speaking of nostalgia, let's talk about our next track, Stop Living, Don't Dream from Walwin. Now, this is one of my first introductions to Walwin, but holy nostalgia on this one, guys. This is one of those that immediately you get lyrics like, we spent all night on MSN talking, we want to form a band and play Warped Tour in San Jose, let's talk about the In-Betweeners and Skins, and I instantly was just transported back to, 2010, 2011, when all those things were so popular. And I love the switch up at the second verse where he talks about, our dreams are going to change because now we want to play We Were Young Fest. And that's just such a cool little twist that we haven't seen yet really in this genre. So Stop Living and Don't Dream by Walwin. Go check it out. Next up, we have Nevermind from Between You and Me. Another classic pop punk track here. I love the line in this song where it says, I graduated, but I still get underpaid. And if that's not the truth for all of us in this day and age, I don't know what is. Everybody graduates with degrees or even master's degrees, and then they're still underpaid. So love this track from Between You and Me. Nevermind. Go check it out. Next up, we have Punching Bag from Set It Off. Now, I wanted to talk about this one because this is Set It Off's first release as independent artist, not attached to a label. I love that they went out and did this, and I love the story behind this song. They're basically saying, don't be a punching bag. Don't let people walk all over you. Don't let somebody dictate your happiness. And I love another line in this track that says, people pleasing was never good for your health, and if that's not true, then I don't know what is. As somebody that constantly tries to be a people pleaser, I know that sometimes it really is dangerous to your health because you try so hard to just make everyone happy that it just is never going to be something that you can do. So Punching Bag from Set It Off, go check it out. Next up, we have This Won't Go Over Well from The Haunt. Now, this is my first introduction into The Haunt, and I'm interested to see more and go back and listen to more of The Haunt because I love the lyrics. I love the angst in this track. So excited to listen to a little bit more and maybe do a little bit of a deep dive. So This Won't Go Over Well from The Haunt. Go check it out. The next track is We Don't Get High Like We Used to from 408. Now, this is my second experience with 408 after their song Markopis, but this is another classic nostalgic pop punk track where we're talking about how we don't do things like we used to do in the past, and we just kind of want to go back to those old days. But I can really visualize the story that they're telling in this track. You know, I can visualize those Halloween promises, and I can visualize that cutting up of the Green Day t-shirt. So really happy with this track. We Don't Get High Like We Used To by 408. Go check it out. Next up is Full Free Radical from Happy Daze. This is my second experience with Happy Daze after Faded, but I really wanted to touch on this track because they have an album due out on May 12th that I'm really looking forward to and looking to hear more from them. So Full Free Radical from Happy Daze, go check it out. Next up is a new band for me, and it's called Eat Your Tail from the band Sessions. So Sessions is a new find for me. I never had seen them before. It looks like this is only their second single, but I love the sound behind this. I can't wait to hear more from them. I don't have a whole lot to say about the track other than Eat Your Tail by Sessions. Go check it out. Next up, we got Landslide from Crooked Teeth. So this is a classic punk song to me. I love the lyrics behind it. I love the sound, the emotion, everything from Crooked Teeth on this track. And I just wanted to include them because I'm really excited to hear more from Crooked Teeth. But Landslide from Crooked Teeth, go check it out. And the last track that I want to talk about is Echoes from Born for Greatness. This is a debut single for Born from Greatness, and I am so excited to hear more from them because if you liked Archetypes Collide new album, if you like Bad Omens, if you just like hard rock in general, you're going to love this track. I'm excited. I think I saw on social media that they have an EP coming soon, so I'm really looking forward to hearing that when it comes out. But Echoes from Born for Greatness, go check it out. That wraps it up for our single reviews for the week, but we do have two things that I want to touch on in the news. And the first one is some tour announcements. So the first one that I want to talk about is Meet Me at the Altar. They are doing a headlining tour this summer with support from Chloe Lilac and Kid Sister. Looking forward to maybe being able to catch them on tour. I think in May is when they come to my area, so looking forward to checking them out. And then we also got a tour announcement from Godsmack with Stained. They're going on a co-tour, and there's going all over the country. So if you want to go check out Meet Me at the Altar, Godsmack, Stained, Chloe Lilac, or Kid Sister, go check them out on their socials, and you can get tour information there. The second piece of news that I just wanted to touch on very briefly is the iHeartRadio Music Awards were last week, and we got to see some of the alternative/rock genre awards, and they were interesting, to say the least. The best rock song went to Black Summer from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, which love that song, love the Chili Peppers. Best rock artist was Papa Roach, which definitely was interesting. I don't know. I didn't remember them releasing a whole lot last year, but I'll have to go back and see. But best rock artist at the iHeartRadio Awards was Papa Roach, so that was an interesting one. And then the best new alternative artist went to Giovanni and the Hired Guns. Now, obviously, I'm going to sit here and say we want some justice for Turnstile because they continue to get snubbed at all these award shows. But I'm not going to bash on Gio and the Hired Guns because they are a band that I've been with for a while now. And I actually was with them in the Texas country scene is where I discovered them. So if you haven't listened to Giovanni and the Hired Guns yet, go give them a listen. I think you guys are really going to like them, and I'm excited to see what they have up their sleeve. I'm excited to listen to new music from Gio and the Guns because they've always been a favorite of mine. I'm glad that they're starting to get some exposure. So Gio and the Hired Guns, go check them out if you haven't heard them yet. That wraps it up for us here on the Matrix Music Review podcast this week. I hope you all enjoyed. We had a bunch of albums and singles to talk about this week, so thank you for sticking with me through all that. As always, if you liked this episode, do me a favor, go share it with friends, family, anybody that you have. Let's keep growing this community and let everybody know about all this good music that's coming out. Give me a follow on the social medias at Matrix Music Review on Twitter and Instagram. And check out our Spotify playlist, which will be linked in the description of this episode. And like we always do, for my Spotify listeners with our Anchor platform, we're going to let one of the artists from this episode play us out. And if you couldn't figure it out, the band that I'm most jazzed about this week is Archetypes Collide, so I'm going to let them play us out with their song Destiny.